supporters and members. Heritage Ohio's mission is to help people save the places that matter, build community, live better. Our next regularly scheduled webinar will be February 24th, How Redlining Has Shaped Our Cities and Increased the Racial Divide in America. Today, our presentation is Demystifying Influencer Marketing. We will be taking questions at the end of the presentation. If you have a question, please type it into the question box at any time. If you are having issues with the webinar software, these are most likely solved if you close the program and restart it with the link that was sent to you. This afternoon, GoToWebinar will send you a link to the recording of this webinar. We have 3 presenters today. Elizabeth Dekker uses her background in the arts to promote exploring our world in creative ways. She's currently using her skills to promote the City of Worthington as its tourism director, as well as teaching business classes through her company, The Right Hands. Nicholas Dekker is a food travel writer based in Columbus, writing his award-winning blog, Breakfast with Nick, since 2007. Nick also freelances for Experience Columbus, Tourism Ohio, Ohio Magazine, Columbus Monthly, and many other travel publications. His day job, he works on the marketing team for Greater Columbus Arts Council. Paula Santiago de Castillo works at Tourism Ohio and Ohio Find It Here brand. As social media coordinator, she handles everything from day-to-day postings to influencer campaigns and social video content. So right now I am going to hand this over to Nick and Elizabeth. Let me change presenters. Okay, there you go.
Okay. Hi everyone. This is Nick and Beth. We're just coming to you, through the through this login here. So we'll just jump right in and we'll move at a pretty quick pace. Just talking about our topic of demystifying influencer marketing. What is it? How does it work? How can you build some effective relationships out of it? So just a real quick starting point. When we hear this word influencer, we just wanted to address this, is that a lot of times there's this negative connotation to it. A lot of times people think of it meaning as an out-of-touch social media star, someone with an Instagram feed who's constantly asking for free stuff from different businesses, someone who doesn't have a real job. And there are these examples out there of people with bad behavior that sort of ruin it for everyone else. But we want to talk about how they are much more than that, and how they can be these very effective advocates for you and your destination, your business, your organization. So kind of quick definition, when we talk about an influencer, again, we tend to think of someone who has a large following on Instagram or a big YouTube channel or something like that. But really that definition can be so much broader. This could be someone who works as an independent journalist. It could be someone who writes a blog, who has a huge following on social media. It could also be someone who is an expert in a particular field. Maybe it's someone who has worked in a particular business or an industry for a long time and people have gotten to know them. They follow their recommendations, their interest in what they have to say. It could also be a loyal customer. It could be someone who's a regular visitor, someone who is already a diehard fan of your destination or your business. So really it's anyone that has a trusting audience and is genuinely connected to them. And more, I think companies and publications are recognizing how they can be effective and how they're here to stay. There's definitely going to be trends. Things will change, platforms change and everything, but it's a major part of marketing nowadays. Really in recent years, spending on influencer marketing has increased dramatically. There are a number of brands and organizations and agencies who have made it a specific line item to work with influencers on different campaigns. And we have a few statistics just to share, although we know that 2020 has probably blown all of these out of the water in good ways and bad ways. Surely over the past year, we've seen this really big push towards virtual engagement with people with through digital platforms, of new ways of reaching audiences. There are a lot of people who have found new voices and become influential in different realms just out of necessity over this past year. There's a growing number of companies that say they spend anywhere from 10 to 30% of their marketing budget on influencer marketing. Those that have done it, about 80% of them find it very effective, and many of them find that they get the same or better ROI as traditional approaches. Some of the biggest platforms nowadays, Instagram is still really big. The two portions of it, which is the Instagram feed, which are static posts, and Instagram stories, which are posts that stay for only 24 hours and then disappear. YouTube is still a very popular channel. By and large, video has become a very large thing. And one of the, I say newer, though it's been around for a couple of years, one of the biggest growing platforms is TikTok, which is a video sharing platform. So we just wanted to lay a couple of those ground things, and then we wanted to share about ways that you can discover influencers, whether it's them reaching out to you, you reaching out to them, and then what are some of the ways that you can sort of research them and build some effective relationships.
So Nick and I kind of represent two sides of this world. Him as the influencer or the content creator, and then in my job as tourism director, like many of you, I'm usually on the other side of it, where I am either hiring influencers or content creators, or people are asking or coming to me and asking if they can partner with me. So I like to think about this in a couple different ways, because I do see what Nick kind of how he works with people, and then how I would prefer to work with people too. So we really try to think about both sides. I like to think about your three layers of influencers. Number one is going to be the locals. This year, I'm sure that I speak for many of you, we've really had to turn to our residents to help us market, as our budgets were slashed, and a lot of our sites really turned very close to home for marketing efforts and kind of small town marketing. So the locals, these are longtime residents, they're local bloggers, people who live in your neighborhood, who know your area already, people who've lived there for a long time. Your second one, people from other cities. This group and other associations that I know a lot of us are members of are great places to get recommendations for influencers, because you know the people in your area, but if you want to bring in visitors from other areas, you're going to need to know those influencers as well. So asking people in other organizations that you're part of, Heritage Ohio, obviously, CBB groups, other DMO organizations, because their audience is going to be much different than yours. And then the third way is the direct outreach from influencers. All those emails or direct messages that you receive, I know many of us get these as this becomes more and more of a thing. Those are a great way to do it, because they are motivated and they want to work with you first. So what happens when you've decided you want to start working with somebody, you want to use a content creator like this, and you want to do some more of this marketing? Well, the first thing you do, go ahead and search your local media to see who is working with whom. What are other organizations in your area or your county? Who are they working with, and how did that work out? Searching popular hashtags is a great way to check it out. So hashtag walking tours, hashtag historical tours, hashtag historic downtowns, or hashtag small towns. What are those people talking about, and how are they working with people? Who are any similar companies or brands that are working, who are they working with, who they've targeted already? Then what are their active platforms? Where are they? And that is going to be really specific. I actually teach a social media class, and other than this, and one of the things I love to tell people is you don't have to be on every platform. You can choose one or two platforms that your brand is going to live on. So make sure that your influencers and the people that you're working with are on your platforms. Are you only going to focus on Instagram and TikTok? You really want to hit hard with the visuals, with photos, and with video. Great. who are those influencers? Are they there? If they're on Facebook and not on Instagram and TikTok, that's not a great place for you to be. So make sure that they're there. It is definitely going to help if they're at multiple places. So I always say, and of course I'm terribly biased, but that Nick is a really good example of somebody who really does, who is kind of everywhere. He not only writes for traditional accounts, which a lot of content creators do, he writes for traditional accounts, but then on his website, then he's also on several of the standard social media platforms as well. So where are you going to get the most bang for your buck, but then also where's your audience? So once you kind of know those things, scroll through their feeds, get to know who they are. It should only take you really, 10-15 minutes on their feed to figure out, hey, are they somebody that you want to work with? If they're not being professional, or if you feel like they may be skewing towards the wrong audience, then, just move on. There are other people out there, but just make sure that you understand them. Also, don't be afraid of people who are what we refer to as micro influencers. These are influencers, I like to think of them as actually less than 10,000 here in Ohio, but the actual definition is actually fewer than 100,000 followers, specifically on Instagram. But don't be afraid of the smaller content creators, because we are seeing that those audiences of smaller creators are actually more invested and engaged than some of the really huge ones. And so you are getting this concentrated group of people that is going to listen to every word this person says, and that is gold right there. I always say quality over quantity, or reach over niche. Really look and see who those super fans are. Your purpose is to really try to take the existing fans, people who are really loyal followers, and turn them into super fans of your area. So yeah, numbers are good, but definite engagement and their audience, their quality of their audience is better. Just a little tip. If you decide Instagram is where you want to be and where your content creator that you want to work with is, check them out on Hype Auditor. This is going to give you a number that will show you the general quality of their audience and their feed. We don't often see anymore a whole lot of people that are purchasing followers, because it's kind of an obvious thing, and we've kind of routed those out. However, there are definitely people that have a huge number of inactive followers, and hypeauditor.com is going to tell you what the quality of that person is. I believe you can get a few searches in before you have to pay for it, but it is a worthwhile investment if you're going to continue to do more and more influencer marketing. And then finally, make sure your audience is matched. Like I said before, does your focus or their focus and audience fit your destination? Are they naturally going to visit? For example, hopefully we've all heard of the Butler County Donut Trail. It's obviously a big deal in our household, being the breakfast family. But would you want to include or reach out to a fashion or lifestyle writer to do the Butler County Donut Trail? Maybe you would if there's overlap, but in general, look and make sure that your audiences are going to match, and that their audience would be interested. And if they do come to you and ask, and they are a specific niche, again, if they're fashion focused, for instance, do you have some local shops or local boutiques or local places that are super Instagrammable that you could point them to try to match up those audiences if you really do want to work with them?
So we wanted to talk about the outreach process, and we are going to look at it from two angles. One is if you identify someone that you want to work with and you want to reach out to them, and then one is looking at it turned around, is what if someone reaches out to you and says, hey, I'd like to collaborate with you, visit your destination, whatever. A lot of these aspects of the relationship are the same, but we're just going to kind of break it down into two different parts. So it's good to keep in mind that this is a process that you're trying to build this ideally longer term relationship and make someone kind of a long-term advocate for your area. But just keep in mind that this will require outreach to someone, whether it's emailing them or direct messaging them, pitching some ideas, some discussion, maybe some back and forth negotiation, and some follow-up. In general, when you're working with someone who operates as an influencer, you're looking for people who are professional, manageable, and creative. It's like working with anyone that you would contract with. If you encounter someone who's difficult or demanding or seems unreasonable, you can move on, or you can you can save that person maybe for another campaign. If you are reaching out to someone, reach out personally and individually. Don't send out these giant mass emails. Contact them directly, either by email or direct message. Once you kind of figure out what's their preferred platform, are they active on Facebook? Are they active on Instagram? You can reach out to them there. I get people that reach out to me all the time through Instagram direct messages. Understand that there's a lot of influencers that don't do this full time. So give them time to respond, or understand that maybe they are balancing a job or a family. Maybe this is something they just do on the side, or it's just part of how they make a living. It's good. You can even just do kind of a quick outreach and just see, like, hey, would they be open to you sending some ideas their way? I always like to use for quick emails, a 222 email format. It's just 3 groups of 2 sentences. When you're reaching out to someone, and this applies beyond this. First 2 sentences, quick introduction, who are you, what do you do? 2 sentences just to notice and compliment them. This comes out of you having spent some time either on their website or their feeds, or reading some other stuff and saying, hey, I saw you just did a trip to this place. It looked really awesome that you did this. I've been there too, something like that. And then the last 2 sentences are a direct call to action. Hey, I represent this organization. We would love it if you came to visit to see these 2 things that we're known for and wrote about them. What do you think of that? There's that. As you kind of continue down this process, you can ask for writing samples. You can ask them to send video or image examples to you. And essentially, you're convincing them how is your brand, your organization, your destination, how is it right for them? How does it fit? Hey, I noticed you write about this. We actually have 3 different shops that sell this in our region. Would you love to come visit and experience them? And understand that I think the best of influencers are ones who will come back with questions. They'll clarify things. Maybe they'll throw out some of their own ideas, or they might say no. And in my, for me personally, and in other folks that I've worked with, I think the best folks are the ones that know when to say no, when they can say, hey, you know what, this doesn't really fit my area of expertise. This doesn't fit my focus. Maybe another time, or, how about, we just won't work together.
So when people then, when you really want to work with people, obviously you're getting a lot of these emails and these messages, and people are wanting to work with you if you're an interesting area. So make sure the first thing is make sure to approach it with curiosity and not judgment. I know that a lot of us have had bad experiences with influencers. I absolutely have, and I am married to one. So not from him, but I will say that if I approach an email that I receive that is clearly asking for something for free, I really do try to approach it with a curiosity and like, okay, let's start there and move on, because something really great might come out of it. So the first thing is, what are they asking for? If they're asking for free stuff, some in kind, if they're asking for a trip, if they're asking for essentially a job where they're asking you to pay them to come and market you, get those things written down. Don't assume anything about what they're wanting, because you don't know until you ask. And the next thing is, what's your budget? What are you able to offer them? We all have budgets. They've most likely been approved by boards, so we need to follow them. What is your budget for marketing? What can you give them? Also, this is a good note too. what partners in your neighborhood are going to be willing to either do an in-kind donation or potentially discount something that you can then offer your influencer. That's always a good list to have in the back of your mind, just to kind of have as a place to start. And don't assume that they're going to do it for an in-kind payment. A lot of influencers now, I think, there are essentially two parts to especially invited travel trips, where you have the part where they are posting on social media while they're actually at the trip, and you're getting this really great boost over the time that they're there. And then they're going to go home and they're going to write something about it. And those are two different parts of it and two different parts of the budget. They should most likely be paid for their writing, but then essentially the in-kind stuff could potentially come from their social media boost. So don't automatically assume it's just going to be in kind, but you can obviously work that out. So what do you have to offer if you don't have the physical money to actually pay them? Go ahead and offer something, put together an itinerary that might be interesting for them as like an invited travel trip. So, you know, for example, we don't have the budget to pay right now, and I guarantee you that a lot of influencers are going to understand this, especially after the year that we've had and that we're still in. But we can offer for you to stay at a hotel overnight, and we can give you a gift card to go to somewhere. Or, you know, if you're going to be in the area, I can't offer a hotel stay, I can't offer to invited travel, but I can give you passes to this museum or this science center so that you can experience that with your family. Understand that they are putting time and effort into this. There is a lot behind these invited travel trips. I can tell you from experience. There is scheduling, there's traveling, there's childcare if they have kids that they're not able to bring, and so there is a lot of effort going into it. And so you want to make sure that you're meeting them in that place. And then make sure that you specify what they want, and then the connections to their specific audience. So if they have a very specific audience that you're looking to get access to, make sure that you clarify that ahead of time. So one of the things that I had wanted to mention was that a few months ago, and some of you may have also experienced this as well, because I know that I did see a lot of other great Ohio cities on his feed, but I had somebody from TikTok, which I wasn't on at the time, reach out to me. His name was Sir Yacht, that's his username on TikTok, and I had him reach out to me. It was a cold email, and he went ahead and said, hey, a lot of people, I do these quick little Ohio town overviews on TikTok. A lot of people have recommended me come to Worthington. I'd love to come there. Let me know if you're able to, hire me to come out. So I immediately looked him up on TikTok. I had to download the app in order to do so. And he had 250,000 followers, and his followers were super active, thousands of comments on every one of his videos. They were engaged, they were excited. So instead of being judgmental and not understanding that TikTok is new and important, and feeling very old while I'm downloading it for the first time, what I did is I wrote back to him and I said, listen, I see that you have a lot of followers. I so appreciate you reaching out. I am not able to pay what I know that you're worth, but I can offer you X amount. And then he came back and emailed right back and said, that's wonderful. I can't do quite that low, but if you can do, X plus such and such, I'd be happy to come out and do it. And he absolutely came out, and we have gotten a huge boost in that. Currently, it stands at something like 240,000 views on TikTok right now, which is absolutely insane. You cannot pay for that kind of exposure. It's just been really great. So don't automatically be judgmental when they are reaching out to you. I know it's really hard because we all have these bad experiences. Be curious, go through these steps, and figure out how you guys can work together.
And you actually had someone that said that they like booked a trip to Worthington because their like 14-year-old saw his video on
yeah, their 14-year-old saw on video, and they had to cancel their trip to Florida. And so 14-year-old brought it up to the parents and said, hey, you know, now that we can't go to Florida, let's go to Worthington. So they actually came by for the weekend. They came over for 4 days, and they went to all the same places that that Joey went to, and our merchants were thrilled, and they spent money here, which is that's the whole goal.
Yeah. So as you're working with influencers, the thing, and we've kind of said this already, is to build these relationships with specificity. Really, the more you can get specific, the better the relationship will be, the better that you have clear expectations from everyone. Our worst experiences working from my side of things has been when we didn't clarify things and we weren't specific ahead of time, either the destination or we didn't think to actually talk through these things, and it led to sometimes some awkward experiences. For you, first is the destination. You need to be thinking about, and like any marketing effort, what are your goals out of this effort? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Are you trying to sell more of a product or service? Are you trying to get more people to an event? Maybe not right now, but you know, in non-pandemic times, you're trying to get people out to events. Are you generally trying to raise awareness of your organization and its mission, what it does? Are you trying to build a larger following online? Or are you just trying to build up your store of digital content, either photos or videos, marketing materials? You can't just say, and this is from you, the organization, and this is from the influencer side. You can't just say, we'd love to work with you, because that makes the other person do all the work. I've had it happen many times where people have reached out and said, I'd love to work with you. And then they just kind of ... leave it there. So then apparently it was up to me to come up with their marketing efforts. So have some specific asks and goals in mind. And again, yeah, make the whole process collaborative as well. You can sort of pitch ideas to someone. I had a good example once where Young's Jersey Dairy reached out to us, and it was a couple years ago, and they were starting some new kind of like family passes, and they said, hey, do you and your 2 kids want to come out, and kind of we'll give you some passes and let you sort of explore things. And then we kind of pitched some ideas of, well, what if we turn this into like a full day trip to Yellow Springs? And so they started working with the Chamber of Commerce, and we kind of pitched ideas and stuff, and they helped build this little itinerary that we handled on our own. But they threw out some ideas of, hey, you should try biking this trail because we know that you guys like to ride bikes. We know you like breweries. You make sure you stop by Yellow Springs Brewery. And it became this great collaboration. We were all kind of happy with the coverage that came out of it. This maybe doesn't count so much now during pandemic times, but there are obviously different ways of thinking of having like an individual fam tour versus a group tour. Group events can be nice because they can be sort of one and done. You host a whole bunch of people at once. It can be a little more cost effective, and it's a less of a time commitment for you. But the downside of that, of hosting a group all at once, is sometimes you get this sort of blast of like social media coverage, and then it dies away, where you get 10 people that all post pictures and all post maybe the same thing because they all experience the same thing, and then it all kind of goes away. So it's maybe a bigger splash, but it doesn't last as long, as opposed to working with individuals where maybe you can craft sort of specific itineraries and specific collaborations, and you can work with them to sort of extend the coverage and make it a little more personalized, so you're getting different perspectives from individuals. And then this has fortunately become more and more common, is establish a contract, make it an actual signed contract that both parties sign. We love it when organizations do this, and in fact, there's a lot of legal language that is incorporated into these now. We've actually had some specific ones during the pandemic where they've had specific waivers that have related to like health and responsibility and stuff. And it's just good to have those expectations up front. Specify exactly what they are getting. You're getting this, stay in a hotel plus passes to this museum plus a $50 gift card to this restaurant in exchange for, and you can get really specific. We'd love at least one blog post on your site, one static feed on Instagram, at least 10 Instagram stories, one video on TikTok, you know, whatever that is. lay it out, put numbers on that, and even handle, think through those details, such as like, how are they getting there? Do we have to consider parking at all? One thing that comes up for us, because we do a lot of restaurant stuff, is how is gratuity handled for servers? We want to make sure that just because a restaurant is maybe donating a meal, the server isn't necessarily part of that. So we want to make sure that they are covered, so that they're not left hanging. The other thing that's very important is to make sure that they are FTC compliant. Again, a lot of contracts that we've seen actually specify this. If you need to, and it's just generally good habit to do, is just kind of remind them or educate them on proper disclosures for posts. The FTC actually writes up, and they update once in a while what are called their endorsement guidelines. And if you do a quick Google search, you can pull it up. And that's where they specify these sort of truth in advertising guidelines that everyone is supposed to abide by. And in fact, content can be removed from different social media platforms if they're not following it. And there's different language that they can put into either social media captions or blog posts, where they specify, here's what was provided by an organization, here's what was covered by us. There are important hashtags that they should use. Some of it depends on the nature of the relationship. A lot of times for travel and DMOs and stuff, they might be using hashtags like partner or hosted or invited, and that's where they are letting their followers know truthfully, we were invited on this trip, here's what was provided for us. And then there's different narrative ways that they can talk about it as well. This DMO invited us to try this, or they hosted us for the weekend.
And then on your side of it, make sure that you are going to use all of this amazing content that you hired this influencer for. So do not ignore that stuff. Make sure that you're asking for their analytics reports. That can go right in the contract. And then share their blog posts, share their articles, share their social media, and don't just do it when they're actually there. There have been several times where we've been somewhere and we see the person resharing the information that weekend, but then they never talk about it again, and they're missing out. That is content that you helped create because you brought them there, so go ahead and use it. You can always ask for the photos to share. Make sure that at the very least that you give credit. There are definitely people who will charge for this photography as well, so make sure that you ask ahead of time. That can also be built into your contract right up front. Because it's great stuff that you can then use on your site, in your publications, depending on on what you decide on. Communicating all of your posts and everything that you share with the proper tags and hashtags. Tag your businesses, tag your organizations, tag your individuals. Make sure that you get to use that stuff, and make sure that you're clear too about proper tags. About what they shouldn't post. If there are competitors, hashtags, or posts that they shouldn't do, make sure that you let them know about that. And then ask them to report a couple weeks after, usually say about 2 to 4 weeks after, because that's when the analytics are going to be most available and most full with the information. Asking for their links to their posts, articles, social media posts. What are the impressions or the unique views of their articles, and then on social media, and then grab those screenshots of any of the Instagram stories, because those go away after 24 hours. And then any good engagements or comments, or even direct messages that they may have of good experiences, good information. The absolute best thing to take away from this, and the strength of influencer marketing, is building a long-term relationship. Really building true loyalty from that person, from that content creator, is absolutely vital, because they will continue to come back even if you don't hire them. If you've shown them a good time, if you've have them fall in love with your area or your business or your city or your county, they are going to come back on their own. I can speak to this, both of us can speak to this 100%. We have absolutely visited these places again and again and again because we've fallen in love with it, because we are now super fans of these areas. So making them advocates for your areas that's the long-term goal. And make sure to continue to engage them, and also continue to use that information by putting them on your mailing list or their newsletter and sending them press releases. There is absolutely value in treating the influencer like a member of the press. They're a member of the media. That is going to be a real good relationship to continue to use in the future. You're communicating information with them and setting a level of professionalism for them to meet in the future. And there's just nothing like that.
And that's it from us. That's our social media feeds, just so you have those, and we'll turn it back over to Joyce.
Okay, thank you so much. Again, we're going to answer questions at the end, so be typing your questions in now and I'll read those. But I want to send the, Paolo is going to become the presenter from Ohio Tourism. And if you want to take it away, you're on mute, Paolo. I still show you as self-muted.
Hello, can you hear me?
There, yes, we sure can. That's great, thank you.
Great. All right, so let me just try to share my screen here. Can you give, okay, so I haven't used this app before, so please excuse me while I try to share my screen. Joyce, can you give presenting permissions to?
You already have, oh, you have it.
So there's two, I'm logged in two places.
Okay, I'll give it to the other one.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Got it. Great. So at Tourism Ohio, my name's Paola Santiago. At Tourism Ohio, I work as social media coordinator. And over the last 2 years, we've been slowly building our influencer program to go from one-off projects where we partner with someone for a specific campaign to what we have now, which is the brand ambassador program, a slate of 5 people from the 5 different regions that represent our values as an organization, and also like Elizabeth and Nick said, are really excited about our brand and continue to give us partnership and shout outs outside of our requirements in the contract. So one of the things that we really look at the beginning of the year is how our brand ambassador program is going to match up with our overall marketing campaign for the year. We determine our goals by deciding what we really want the influencer to do. And this can be for any influencer. Don't think of a name at first or someone that you particularly want to work with. You have to think of your goals first. These 3 right here at the beginning, brand awareness, audience building, building brand authority, those are really good goals for influencers that appear a lot on Instagram. Instagram is really great for those purposes. If you're looking for engagement and lead generation, you want to think about maybe Facebook, as people are a lot more engaging with leads in terms of purchasing, and the customer funnel, it works a lot better on Facebook. If you're looking for sales or link building, customer loyalty, that's something you want to think about. Pinterest. So your goals actually will help you decide which platform you want to focus on, and after deciding what platform you want to focus on, then you can look at influencers, because they tend to specialize in different platforms. You also want to determine the influencer that would complement your goals, and I'll talk about that in a few slides. But whatever their specialization is, and whatever they love to do, whether it's an influencer that tends to write a lot, or maybe they're really into photography, if that kind of deliverable is going to complement your goals, and that's what you want to go for. In terms of finding an ideal influencer, I love that Nick and Elizabeth mentioned some tools as to kind of going online and automatically determining, is this an active influencer? Is this an engaged influencer? But at the state, we don't have the budget or the resources to use those types of like tools that we can purchase. And the standards are a lot higher for hiring an influencer, because our decisions are monitored by the governor's office. So I look at content relevance. Is the content relevant to, is the content that we create relevant to the audience that the influencer supports? We want to make sure that that's in alignment, so that when the influencer talks about us, their audience is engaged and doesn't lose interest in what we're trying to promote. Engagement, you want to make sure that their likes, comments, and shares are highly engaged, because that means that their audience is interested in the content that they're providing. So that's an indication that they're going to be interested in what we have to provide as well. And then active, you want to make sure that your influencer is answering their own comments, engaging with their community, posting shares and updates about their own audience. That tells us that when we have content on their page that belongs to us and they're partnering with us, that if people start answering questions or start asking questions in the comments or start DMing the influencer, that the influencer is prepared to answer those questions. Some things here on the right that you want to watch out for, like Elizabeth said, lots of followers but low engagement. This suggests that maybe they bought their followers or they aren't very active with their audience. If their content is peppered with ads, like if every week they have 2-3 new brand partnerships, that makes me think that the influencer is not selective with their brand partnerships, and that they'll just kind of work with anyone that offers them a partnership. And while that's good that they're getting so much work, it also tells me that maybe they're just accepting work and not really thinking about what kind of work they want to promote, and that they're not really being kind of selective with what they're doing. And then you also want to watch out for influencer pods. This can be noticed in the comment section of a post. This is a little bit kind of nitpicky, but I look at comments and try to follow the comments to the person that commented. And if there's a bunch of comments from other influencers, this isn't authentic engagement. This means that the influencer reached out to, whatever group of friends that they have that are also influencers and asked them to engage with their post to increase the visibility. And while that's really great that they're all supporting each other, we want to be reaching customers and not other influencers. And then after I kind of go through that list of pros and cons when it comes to influencers, I think about I think back to my goals and I say, okay, I'm a travel brand, and I'm assuming here we're all travel brands related in one way or another. But you don't always have to go for just travel influencers either. You can try to seek someone in the lifestyle section, in the fashion industry, in the wellness section. And for specific projects, like one of our very first influencers was really into eating and reading books. And even though that wasn't particularly travel, we hired her to represent our ice cream trail. And because her audience was so used to seeing updates about food and the places that she goes to like eat out, they were really receptive to the ice cream trail, even though her niche was kind of in books and reading. And thinking kind of outside the box can expand your potential audiences. So if you're a travel audience, or if you're a travel brand and you're trying to promote more like the shop local message, you want to maybe go for someone that's in the retail section. Maybe she does a lot of shopping. Maybe they go to lots of, you know, unique boutique stores. That would be a really great person for a partnership. But it's all about thinking a little bit outside of the travel box so that you can expand your audience as much as possible, because your influencers are there to give you access to audiences you don't have access to. And then lastly, in terms of deliverables, like Elizabeth and Nick mentioned, I like to get all of my deliverables, everything I want, into the contract, because that makes sure that I get exactly what I want, and then during the relationship, I'm not feeling awkward as a customer and as a person who initiated the partnership. I'm not feeling like I have to ask someone ask something of them that they might not be comfortable with, because it's all been hashed out in the contract. We've already agreed to it. And some of these deliverables, we like to build deliverables that are kind of evergreen. So building blogs, producing galleries of reusable or evergreen photos, producing shareable stories, things that we can continue to use over and over again. Because even though we love finding influencers that are willing to create content for us without a financial aspect to it, we want to make sure that we get the biggest bang for our buck, so that when we build the contract, everything that the influencer provides for us, we can use it another time, or we can ask them to, you know, revisit this project and promote it again for a smaller fee. And then I also, in terms of the brand ambassador program, we sign contracts for a longer period of time, not just like a couple of weeks or even a month. And this makes sure that during the time that they're contracted for, that they're not just producing the deliverables, they're also mentioning us outside of those deliverables. So if they're traveling around Ohio and they know that they're going to be somewhere that's particularly touristy or particularly unique, sometimes they'll, you know, ask us if they can share this as part of the partnership, even though it's not something that we initially wanted. And that makes for great, unique content. And we can't, even though we represent the entire state, there's no way that I can be everywhere all the time. So the fact that they're going out of their way and finding these unique things without me even asking them to do it makes me better able to represent the state as a whole, because they're getting unique ideas that I'm just not, you know, I'm not there to explore. And then I do mention here that short contracts are really great for new products, campaign launches, events. I can think of one example, the Ohio State Fair, when, you know, before the pandemic, they were able to contract a group of influencers to help them promote this wine initiative that they had at the fair. And it was a really great, like, one-off sort of event, and they produced a lot of great media off of that. But that's an example of like a short contract versus a long contract. And then here in the last slide, Joyce had asked me to just review a little bit of what we do in the 2021 CoOp program. We've already had a webinar based off of it, but just as a reminder, we do match funds up to $25,000. These campaigns can be a month long, can be a week long, or they can be several months long. We've had a lot of really great success, like here as a snapshot of what we created for the Governor's Office of Appalachia. They previously didn't really have a travel resource for people wanting to explore Appalachia. And we were able to make a website, make a whole social media campaign, a whole digital campaign. It's kind of like a whole package, and you only have to pay for half of it. We set up the campaign, we execute it, we optimize it. All the reporting is provided to you. There's a variety of media channels, and you can have $100 or $10,000. We'll still match it. And the great thing about partnering with us is that all of the resources that you create during your partnership in the co-op, we also get to use. So you're not only getting promotion for yourself, you're also, giving us the access to promote you throughout the year, regardless of whether you're partnered with us within the co-op or not. So all of these great resources, like all of these photos here that were taken in Appalachia, we get to use throughout our marketing resources, and we put it out through Instagram, we put it out through Facebook, we use it in native advertising. So you get kind of indirect marketing throughout the year because we've partnered that one time. So I did want to touch on a few things about FTC compliance. There will be some influencers that are kind of hesitant to use the FTC compliance, like the hashtag ad, hashtag sponsored, and those are things that you really have to remind them along the way. That's really the only thing that I've kind of struggled with in my experience managing influencers, is that you really do have to remind them to use those FTC compliance regulations. And they do have to appear on everything that they produce. Like here, for example, these are Instagram stories that came from a partnership that we did over the summer. There has to be an indication on the story slide that it was sponsored, who the sponsor is, and the campaign hashtags that are appropriate. We also encourage influencers to tag the various organizations that they're visiting. For example, this partnership was in Toledo, so they tagged Metro Parks Toledo because they helped us both coordinate the treehouse day, and it's also, our goal is to promote that area. So of course we're going to tag them in the posts. And then in terms of reporting, you want to make sure that the reporting is part of your contract. It's possible that you can do the reporting yourself, but you can't get things like impressions and clicks to your website. Those you can't infer just from looking at the post. So you want to make sure that a couple of weeks after your initial partnership ends, that your influencer is then providing the reporting you need to show both to your team and maybe to your board or whoever is needing to approve this project or future projects, that this works, that you got what you wanted, and that the influencer partnership can continue to be fruitful. But that's all I had for you guys. If there's any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Okay, thank you so much to all of you. So the first question, I'm going to put the mic back on Nick and Elizabeth. You'll have to make your mic live. The first question for you, since you are on opposite sides of the table, what if an influencer accepts a contract, visits, experiences, and does not have much, if anything, positive to say about their experience?
I haven't had that experience yet, I will say, and I actually don't know that we have with
yeah, I can't think of any like really negative experiences. I think having like specific goals set out ahead of time of what we're wanting to cover helps me sort of establish the angle, like from the influencer perspective, what am I writing or posting about? So even if things are like, I mean, if something went like really drastically wrong, again, we have part of the contract and part of the process is we have a contact person, so we can always reach out and say, hey, something went off the rails here. What should we do about this? But I think having those specific goals, figure out exactly, like it helps me establish the angle that I'm going to write about, so I'll know how to communicate, positive things, or even if I have to offer less of an opinion and more of just a description of here's what this experience was like.
Yeah, and it's hard to answer a what if, but I mean, I think that if that did happen, at least on my side, I would probably just use kind of standard customer service response, trying to asking questions, trying to make it better, being able to, to respond to each complaint individually. But yeah, like I said, we haven't had it mainly because I think that on both sides, we do really look at those goals first. And then we do, when Nick is invited, we do actually a lot of research ahead of time so that we do know what our expectations may be and we can set them properly. So I try to do that on my side as well when I'm creating the contract in the beginning.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Lisa. What if your building is currently closed? Do you have other strategies?
That's a good question.
No, you go.
I mean, I think obviously everyone's leaning into virtual experiences right now. So if there's anything that you can do to like create a virtual tour of your building, it depends on how restricted your building is. If there's someone that you wanted to work with, and you could even hire them or engage them to create a virtual tour, like, hey, what if we gave you a masked up one-on-one tour of the building, and you could take some video or photos, or even do a socially distanced interview of talking about your building, your destination. I mean, everyone's having to convert to virtual and digital stuff right now.
Right, and I will say too that that's where the different layers of content creators really help. Instead of just working with kind of classic influencers that you may not know personally, working with people that are actually in your area and being able to like ask them one-on-one. Like for example, I personally have 2 or 3 content creators right here in Worthington that I know that all of a sudden if I'm like, oh my gosh, such and such business really needs a big boost this week, I can call them up and say like, hey, if I give you a gift card, can you go down there, get some photos, get some information, get it up on your stories on Instagram, and I know that she will do that for me. So that's where those relationships help too. And so I would probably start with that kind of first layer of, making that fan a super fan and leaning into the to the resident relationships that you have.
Can I add, I mean, this, I know may come off as rude, but can you give an indication of what Worthington's annual social influencers budget is?
Well, I mean, we have we're incredibly small. I'm only part-time and that's it. It's just me because we don't have a full CVB budget because we only have one property. So it's very, very small. I think that last year, which again, it's so hard to compare 2020, I think we all understand that. I think last year I probably spent right around $2,500. And that includes some of my boosted posts, but it also includes the actual cost of bringing in influencers for a few staycation themed trips. I do have really great partners as well here, where I have a couple of properties that will give me hotel rooms for free. I have some restaurants that will give me gift cards for free. So I do have a lot of those people. I certainly don't lean on that. I love, and I always try to pay first, but we do have very generous businesses here too. So that has helped quite a bit.
Thank you. I mean, I just didn't know if it was 50,000, 10,000? You know, I just needed some range. I don't know.
We're extremely small, so I would say that's probably not normal. I mean, we're a landlocked city here in Worthington. Columbus is entirely surrounding us, so it is a little bit different, I would say. So it's not a great ruler to use. I would say that in general, if you're looking to bring in an influencer for a weekend, aim to get a couple of those nights comped by a couple of your properties. A lot of properties are getting more and more used to working with influencers and doing that and seeing the value in that. That's been a really exciting thing, at least for me over the last year. And so you're going to be able to do some of that stuff in kind, and then being able to really think about it in terms of what does that weekend actually get you, and thinking about it, as a kind of a chunk of information that you're going to be able to use later too.
That's very helpful.
If I
Go
can
ahead.
step in and just offer, from the state perspective, obviously our budget tries to cover the entire state, so it's quite large compared to an individual CVB. But something that we do to manage budget expectations is exactly that. When you're thinking about building a trip for an influencer, try to get as many parts of that trip comped through the actual business. So, for example, one of our biggest influencer campaigns had to do with our foodie road trip. And we built, because most of that road trip was just traveling around the state to try different foods, we built a dollar amount per day that the influencer could spend on the things they need to do to build their deliverables. So that included restaurant visits, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But then for the stays and for the things that they were doing outside of just eating, we worked with the different CVBs to help us connect with hotels. We worked with them to connect with museums, with the various activities that they were doing to get those things comped. And that brought down the price of our campaign a whole lot, so that at the end, we were really only paying for the food, which I think was like $70 or maybe $100 a day, just because they were visiting so many places a day. And then the actual content fee of that she was charging us. So thinking about that kind of helps cut down the budget a lot. And then also, I know that hiring an influencer, it makes you, especially when we started, it makes you want to think like, okay, what kind of big people can I get involved in this project? But some of the best influencer partnerships that we've had have been with what are considered micro influencers, and it's about kind of reaching out to the people that are already in your community to get them to pitch to people in other communities. So if you're thinking about, like, for us, getting an influencer from Cleveland to promote stuff in Columbus helps us, get travelers from the local area to come and visit just, things around their state. So we hardly ever reach out to influencers that are outside of Ohio, because really those people are not super familiar with our area. They're going to be a lot more expensive, and it's not such a great return on investment. So we focus a lot on regional influencers that are helping us exchange travelers from different areas of the state.
That's very helpful. Also, something I hadn't thought of, I think of people eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner when they visit communities, because so many restaurants want to be supported. Do they eat 5 or 6 times at different places in a day?
Well, our foodie road trip influencer, what she did was she was traveling with her husband, who also helps her manage her blog and all that. It's her name is Jane. It's the account called Foods of Jane. She's from Cleveland. She's great. But what she did was order one meal at each restaurant. She shared it with her husband. And that way she wasn't eating like so much. Because really that is a lot of food. I don't think most of us eat 3 full meals at 3 different restaurants each day. But yeah, she just ordered, or she would order small things and make her recommendations that way. And she also was really active with the owners of the business and got their recommendations as well. So that's sort of on an individual basis, I'm guessing. You know, depends on the influencer. Are they willing to eat 3 full meals, or maybe they want to share something with their travel partner, or maybe they're just getting a sampling from the restaurant. Some of our restaurants have offered to kind of downsize the portions so that the influencer can taste a bunch of different things without having to fill up. So that's kind of a case-by-case question.
Yeah, and I will say, just to speak to that, like, it's part of the job. Like like we you get to know how you're able to, you know, sample a few things. Nick and I always order, you know, 2 smaller things, and we always split stuff. If we're there with our boys, we always make sure it's 4 different things. So you kind of just get to know how to do that and not getting so overfull that you're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I wondered about that, particularly Nick, with all of your eating. Do you have a record?
Do I have a what for like the most things I've eaten in one?
Yes.
I think the issue with us is that we try to go to as many coffee shops, so we've definitely been over caffeinated before.
We also too, and this is part of our process when we sort of engage with destinations, is we like parks and hiking too.
Yeah.
Both as an offset to the eating, but also just because we generally like them. So we make sure, because we've had some trips where it's like, oh my gosh, we just ate breakfast at 9 a.m. and then like at 11:30 they have us going to lunch at this place, and we'll scale down what we're eating, but also we'll say like, well, how about in between that we go to this nearby park, or we go to this art museum that has us walking around for a couple hours.
Yeah,
that's fine.
A lot of influencer trips will be really active. At least we try to make them that way. So it kind of tends to balance itself out, like Nick said. And also, you know, to use you, Nick, as an example, sometimes when what we're asking influencers or creators to do is really food heavy, we'll have them try one thing and then describe all the other things. So I remember, Nick, you did a blog for us on ice pops.
Yes.
And I remember you had one place you really wanted to recommend, and you know, the blog kind of focused on that place, but he also named a whole bunch of different places where you could experience similar things, and that way they don't have to like try all the things, but you know, use their local knowledge to recommend different places, recommend various things on the menu, but then focus on one place that's particularly interesting.
Yeah.
That's great. I have one last question, and please, folks, type in a question if you have it. The question is for any of the panelists. What is the most unique, interesting campaign you have seen involving an influencer?
Unique, interesting campaign. I'd have to think about that.
That we've done, or that we've just observed?
I think anything you've ever observed from any place.
Okay. Well, that's sort of hard because there's so many good ones. But one that I observed, I think, was from Maine. They did a year-long influencer campaign. They had 5 influencers come from their regional state area. And the greatest part about this campaign was that it was really, really, really embedded into the overall marketing campaign. So it wasn't just that Maine did a really cool influencer campaign. It's that everything that these influencers created was part of the rest of the marketing campaign. So it felt like it was really wholesome in that way. So when you saw the influencers on social media, you also saw similar or complementary advertisements pop up on Google, pop up on YouTube when you're watching TV, or on connected TV. And then you also saw their advertisements maybe in the news or in the newspaper. And we had one campaign that was particularly like just right on the nose like that, and it was our partnership with astronaut Harrison, who's this little kid influencer, and his dad, who live in Columbus, and they're super adorable, but he has a social anxiety, and one of the ways that his dad helped him get through that was by dressing up as an astronaut and visiting different places and kind of speaking from the science and aviation perspective of how that's so inspiring. So we had them take our space and aviation road trip to the moon and back, and it just so happened that we were also connecting that same influencer partnership to our PR. So in terms of the media side, media representatives were very aware that he was traveling around the state, and that kind of made a story. We also connected with different astronauts that come from Ohio that were still alive and well. And they also talked about this influencer campaign, and they connected with astronaut Harrison. And then, through digital and native advertising, we were able to make a really big splash. And in the end, we had astronaut Harrison get the attention of actual current NASA astronauts, and that that sort of virality kind of made our campaign what it ended up being, which was super successful. Everyone was talking about it. We went viral during the Ohio State Fair. So in terms of, I don't know, like in terms of thinking about really great influencer campaigns, it's the ones that are really embedded into the overall marketing strategy that kind of tend to impress me, at least.
Nick, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I can't think of any. I mean, I know we've had some successful ones that like we've done like on my end. I know we mentioned it, the Butler County Donut Trail has been a really fun one. It's obviously very fitting with my audience. I think it really it was a good example of they sort of made advocates out of us. Like they introduced us to a lot of places that we've really grown to love, and we've gone back to that area on our own to like revisit restaurants and revisit bakeries and stuff like that.
And I think anytime that you have a visual, I mean, like Paola was saying, anytime that you have a visual connection between just this one individual trip and then kind of an outer advertising, more of a traditional advertising campaign, it works really, really well, because that graphic kind of connection is always going to really stick in people's minds.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to think about influencers as this like mysterious, vague entity that you only hope to understand. But really, you're paying for word of mouth, and it's someone that the community you're trying to access, say, Nick's community is foodie related, very interested, particularly in breakfast. And it's a group of people that you don't have access to, but you're paying your influencer, in this case, Nick, to kind of spread the good word about your brand and recommend things based on personal knowledge, personal experience, and excitement that they have about your brand. It's kind of like having a friend talk you up and hype you up throughout the state. And you kind of have to treat them that way, and in that way incorporate all of the good, valuable things that they're saying, creating for your brand, into the rest of your marketing campaign, because you really can't beat someone's word of mouth. Like it's kind of a direct recommendation from someone you can trust.
Yeah, that's wonderful perspective. Well, we have come to the end of our questions and we've run over a little bit. Thank you so much for sharing your information. Paulo, people can certainly get a hold of you at the state of Ohio. If anybody has any additional questions, please email me at jbarrett@heritageohio.org. And go to webinar. We'll be sending this webinar out to you as a recording this afternoon. And please continue to check the Heritage Ohio website for upcoming events. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.